The winter sun spilled through the tall glass windows of the Donovan estate. A sprawling mansion, sitting on the hills overlooking the city like a crown. The marble floors gleamed, the crystal chandelier sparkled, and every corner whispered of wealth that ordinary people could barely dream of. For the staff who worked there, the luxury was both beautiful and suffocating, a reminder that they belonged to serve, not to live. Among them was Naomi, the maid who moved quietly through the corridors with her head bowed, her heart heavy, and her hands hardened from endless scrubbing. Naomi had been working for the Donovans for 3 years. She had left her small hometown in Georgia after tragedy struck. Her husband had died in a construction accident, leaving her to raise their only son, Marcus, alone. She needed money, and the Donovans, a billionaire couple with a reputation for extravagance and arrogance, needed someone to keep their palace spotless. The pay was good, but the cost was her dignity. From the moment she stepped into the mansion, Naomi knew her skin color and humble background made her an easy target for Mrs. Donovan's sharp tongue. "Naomi," Mrs. Donovan would sneer, her designer heels clicking against the marble, "did you even wipe this properly? I can see a streak. Do you think this is acceptable in my house?" Mr. Donovan wasn't much kinder. He rarely addressed her directly, but when he did, it was often laced with mocking humor, delivered loudly for his guests to laugh at. Naomi endured it all with quiet strength. She reminded herself daily that she wasn't there for their approval. She was there for Marcus, her son, who was now 19 and training to become a soldier. He had always been her pride, her light in the darkest nights. Every dollar she earned went into his education, his uniforms, and his future. She told herself that one day, when Marcus stood tall in his military dress blues, everything she endured would be worth it. That thought kept her going when her hands ached and her back screamed in pain. On one particular morning, the Donovans were preparing for an extravagant gala. The entire mansion buzzed with activity. Florists arranged roses, caterers unpacked trays of delicacies flown in from Paris, and Naomi hurried from room to room, polishing silver and pressing linens. She moved quickly, her steps practiced, but no matter how efficient she was, Mrs. Donovan found fault. "Honestly, Naomi, I don't know why we keep you," she snapped, standing at the grand staircase in her silk robe. "You're always so slow. I asked for the dining table to shine like glass, and it looks like something from a diner." Naomi bowed her head. "I'll redo it, ma'am." Mrs. Donovan crossed her arms, smirking. "Of course you will. You should be grateful we give you work at all. Not everyone would let someone like you walk through their doors." Mr. Donovan, sipping his coffee nearby, chuckled cruelly. "Let her be, darling. You know she's doing her best. For someone who probably grew up with nothing, this mansion must feel like a fairy tale." The guests who had arrived early laughed, their champagne glasses glistening. Naomi's cheeks burned, but she didn't lift her head. She knew that responding would only bring more humiliation. Instead, she whispered, "Yes, sir," and returned to her task, silently praying for the strength to hold back her tears. But deep inside, her heart broke piece by piece. She thought of Marcus training far away, his letters filled with words of encouragement for her. "Stay strong, Mama," he always wrote. "One day I'll make you proud." She couldn't let him know how much she suffered, how each insult cut deeper than any blade. She wanted him to believe she was unshakable, a rock he could lean on. That evening, as the gala began, Naomi stayed behind the scenes carrying trays of drinks, cleaning spills before anyone noticed, and blending into the shadows like she didn't exist. The Donovans, dressed in glittering attire, laughed and boasted to their wealthy friends. Every so often, Mrs. Donovan would call Naomi loudly, just to give her a task in front of others, enjoying the way her maid's presence made her look powerful. "Naomi, fetch me another glass." "Naomi, adjust the flowers." "Naomi, don't just stand there, move." The humiliation never stopped. As Naomi hurried through the glittering crowd, she caught sight of the grand portraits hanging on the walls, paintings of the Donovans in luxury, posing with yachts, horses, and European castles. She thought of how different her own family portraits would look. Just her and Marcus in their tiny living room, his smile brighter than anything money could buy. She held onto that memory like a shield. Late into the night, after the last guest left, Naomi cleaned up the aftermath. Broken glass, spilled wine, half-eaten plates. Her feet ached, her hands trembled, and exhaustion weighed on her body, but she worked in silence. When she finally finished and returned to her small servants' quarters, she sat on the edge of her bed and pulled out the latest letter from Marcus. Her eyes softened as she read his words. He wrote about his training, his pride in serving his country, and how much he missed her cooking. At the bottom, he had written something that made her cry silently into her hands. "Mama, you're the bravest person I know. When I come home, I'll protect you the way you've always protected me." Naomi clutched the letter to her chest, unaware that the world around her was about to change. She didn't know that the same son she prayed for every night would soon walk through the mansion's doors, and his arrival would shake the Donovans' arrogance to its core. The days after the gala blurred into one another. Naomi worked tirelessly as always, polishing, dusting, and cleaning while the Donovans carried on with their lavish lives. Each day was another test of her patience, but she endured for one reason: Marcus. She lived for the moments when a letter from him arrived, her heart lifting the moment she saw his handwriting. It was her only window into his world, a reminder that her sacrifices were not in vain. But on this particular morning, Naomi woke with a strange feeling, as if something in the air had shifted. The mansion was quieter than usual, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. She was sweeping the foyer when she heard the heavy knock at the door. Her hands trembled around the broom handle. Visitors didn't knock at the Donovan estate. They rang the bell or their names were announced. Cautiously, she approached the door, and when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Standing before her was Marcus. He was no longer the boy she had hugged goodbye a year ago, carrying a worn duffel bag and wearing hope like armor. He was a soldier now, taller, stronger, dressed in uniform with polished boots and medals gleaming against his chest. His jawline was sharper, his shoulders broader, but his eyes still held the same warmth, the same love she remembered. Naomi's knees buckled, and before she could speak, Marcus wrapped her in a tight embrace. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm home." Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks as she clung to him. "Oh, my boy," she cried. "You're safe. You're safe." For a moment, the marble floors, the chandeliers, the weight of humiliation, it all disappeared. In that embrace, Naomi remembered who she was, remembered her strength, remembered why she endured. But the moment didn't last. From the grand staircase above, Mrs. Donovan's sharp voice cut through the air like glass. "What is going on here?" Naomi quickly stepped back, wiping her tears. Marcus turned to see the woman he had heard about only in passing, from his mother's carefully edited stories. Mrs. Donovan descended the staircase in a silk gown, her expression twisted with disdain. "Naomi," she snapped, "why are you bringing strangers into my home?" Naomi's lips trembled. "Ma'am, this is my son. He's just returned from training." Mrs. Donovan arched a brow, her lips curling into a cruel smirk. "Your son? Well, he certainly doesn't belong here. This is a private residence, not a bus stop." She glanced at Marcus, her tone dripping with mockery. "And dressed like that, what are you supposed to be? Some kind of toy soldier?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had been trained for discipline, to control his emotions even when provoked. Still, his eyes burned as he saw the way Mrs. Donovan looked at his mother, as if Naomi were nothing more than dirt beneath her shoes. Before Naomi could apologize or usher him out, Mr. Donovan appeared, adjusting his cufflinks. "What's all this noise?" His gaze landed on Marcus, and he let out a cold laugh. "Well, look at that, Naomi's boy. I see the family resemblance. Same tired eyes, same worn-out look." He stepped closer, deliberately circling Marcus as though inspecting a servant. "Tell me, soldier, is this what you left your poor mother for? To march around in a cheap uniform pretending you're important?" Naomi's heart twisted. She wanted to shield Marcus from their venom, to beg the Donovans to stop. But before she could, Marcus spoke. His voice was calm, steady, yet filled with quiet fire. "I serve this country with honor, sir. And I came here to see my mother, not to be disrespected in her workplace." The room fell silent for a moment. Naomi looked at her son in awe, his courage standing in stark contrast to her silence all these years. But the Donovans only laughed. "Honor?" Mr. Donovan sneered. "Do you even know who you're speaking to? I built half this city. You're just a pawn in a uniform, sent off to fight wars for scraps. Don't pretend you're equal to us." Mrs. Donovan added, "Exactly. And as for your mother, she should remember her place. She's here to clean, not to entertain visitors." especially visitors who think playing soldier makes them special. Naomi's hands shook as she gripped Marcus's arm. "Please, son," she whispered, "don't say anything. It's not worth it." But Marcus placed his hand gently over hers. "No, Mama. You've been silent for too long." He turned back to the Donovans, his voice firm but respectful. "I may not be a billionaire, but I've seen things your money can't buy. I've stood beside men who'd give their lives for strangers, who fight so people like you can live in comfort. And the woman you mock, she's the strongest person I know. She raised me alone, working herself to the bone while you look down on her from your golden chairs. You should be ashamed." The words echoed through the marble halls. For the first time in years, Naomi saw the Donovans falter, even if just for a second. Mrs. Donovan's smirk faded, replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. Mr. Donovan shifted uncomfortably, his jaw clenched tight. But pride wouldn't let them show weakness. "How dare you lecture us in our own home?" Mr. Donovan spat. "Get out, both of you. And Naomi, if you leave with him, don't bother coming back. You'll lose the only job keeping you afloat." Naomi froze. Her breath caught, her chest tightened, and fear clawed at her heart. She thought of the bills, the rent for her small apartment, the letters Marcus still needed her support to get through. She couldn't just walk away, not yet. But before she could speak, Marcus straightened his shoulders, his eyes unwavering. "We don't need your charity," he said quietly. "My mother has given this house more grace than it deserves. If you can't see her worth, that's your loss." He turned to Naomi, holding out his hand. For the first time in years, she hesitated, not because she didn't want to go, but because she had been conditioned to stay. But looking into Marcus's eyes, she saw the promise he had written in every letter. "Mama, I'll protect you." Her trembling hand slid into his and he squeezed it firmly. Together they stepped toward the door. Behind them, Mrs. Donovan shouted, "You'll regret this, Naomi. You're nothing without us." But Naomi didn't look back. For the first time in her life inside that mansion, she walked with her head high. The air outside the Donovan estate felt different, lighter, fresher, almost as though Naomi had walked out of a prison she didn't realize had locked her in chains. She clutched Marcus's hand tightly as they descended the stone steps, her heart pounding with fear and relief all at once. For years, those gilded halls had been her cage, and every insult from the Donovans had been a reminder of her place in their world. But now, standing beside her son, she felt a strength she hadn't known she still possessed. They walked to the small bus stop near the mansion's gates, and Naomi's mind raced. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I can't believe I walked out. What if I can't find another job? How will we pay the bills?" Marcus squeezed her hand, his gaze steady. "Mama, don't worry. I didn't come home to watch you suffer. You've carried me all these years. Now it's my turn to carry you." His words were like balm to wounds she had long ignored. Naomi blinked back tears, remembering the nights she had cried alone in her tiny room after the Donovans' cruelty, wishing Marcus were there to give her hope. And now here he was, strong, confident, and determined to protect her. They boarded the bus, blending in with the ordinary people heading to work. Nothing like the world of glittering gowns and champagne glasses they had just left behind. Naomi felt small at first, stripped of the wealth she had been surrounded by, even if it was never hers. But then she noticed something. The people on the bus smiled kindly, nodded politely, and no one looked at her like she was beneath them. For the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. When they reached her modest apartment, Naomi unlocked the door and let Marcus inside. The space was tiny compared to the Donovans' mansion, just a worn sofa, a second-hand table, and 2 small bedrooms. But Marcus looked around with pride. "This feels like home," he said softly. "Not like that cold palace they live in." Naomi laughed through her tears. "It's not much, baby. I wanted more for you." Marcus turned to her, his expression firm. "You already gave me more than money ever could. You gave me love. You gave me strength. That mansion may have gold ceilings, but it has no heart. This place, this has you." Naomi's chest swelled with emotion. For years she had believed she was failing him by not providing more, but now, hearing his words, she realized she had already given him the most valuable gift, a mother's unwavering love. That evening, they cooked together for the first time in years. Naomi pulled out a pot of collard greens and cornbread, Marcus's childhood favorite. The smell filled the small apartment, warm and comforting, so unlike the stiff, flavorless meals she used to serve at the Donovans' galas. As they sat together at the table, Marcus bowed his head. "Mama," he said, "thank you for everything. I promise you'll never have to bow to anyone again." Naomi closed her eyes, her hands shaking as she whispered her first prayer of true gratitude in a long time. But even as they ate and laughed, a shadow lingered in the back of her mind. What would they do now? She had no job, no savings, and no safety net. Marcus had just returned from training, but his own pay was barely enough to support them both. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit her fear out loud. "Marcus," she said softly, "what if I can't find work? What if I fail you?" Marcus reached across the table and took her hands in his. "Mama, you will never fail me. Do you know how many nights I thought about giving up during training? The only thing that kept me going was the thought of you, working your fingers raw just to keep me fed. You are my strength, and now it's time I give that strength back to you." Naomi's eyes filled with tears again. For so long she had been the protector, the provider. Now she realized she had raised not just a son but a man, a soldier who understood loyalty, honor and love better than the billionaires who mocked them. Later that night, as Naomi washed the dishes, Marcus scrolled through his phone. His brows furrowed, then lifted in surprise. "Mama," he said suddenly, "do you remember Mr. Carter? The pastor's brother who owns that small restaurant downtown?" Naomi nodded. She had once catered there part-time before working at the Donovans' mansion. Marcus smiled. "He's looking for staff. And he said they're like family. He treats his workers with respect. I think we should go see him tomorrow." Naomi's heart leapt. Could it be possible that a door was opening, just as another slammed shut? She dried her hands on her apron and whispered, "Maybe this is God's way of leading us where we were meant to be." As she lay in bed that night, Naomi thought back to the Donovans' words, their cruelty, their laughter, their belief that she was nothing without them. But now, with Marcus home and a new opportunity ahead, she realized how wrong they were. She wasn't nothing. She was a mother, a fighter, a survivor, and with her son by her side, she was unstoppable. What she didn't know was that fate had bigger plans for her. The Donovans' arrogance would soon come back to haunt them, and the very maid they mocked would become the center of a story that would humble them before the world. The next morning, sunlight streamed into Naomi's modest apartment. She woke to the sound of Marcus humming in the kitchen, frying eggs in a pan. For a moment, she simply lay there, listening, her heart swelling with gratitude. It had been years since she'd heard her son's voice filling her home. She rose quietly and peeked around the corner, watching him move with ease, uniform folded neatly on a chair, strong arms lifting a pan, a smile tugging at his lips. "Good morning, Mama," Marcus said, catching her in the doorway. He kissed her cheek and slid a plate toward her. "Sit down. Today's the start of something new." Naomi laughed softly. "You sound just like your daddy used to." Her chest tightened at the memory, but for once, it wasn't a wound, it was a reminder of love that had never left. After breakfast, they walked together to the downtown restaurant Marcus had mentioned, Carter's Kitchen. Unlike the grand halls of the Donovans' mansion, Carter's was warm, alive with chatter and the smell of home-cooked meals. Families filled the booths, and the air buzzed with laughter. Mr. Carter, a stocky man with kind eyes, came out from behind the counter when he saw Naomi. "Naomi Jefferson?" he exclaimed. "Well, I'll be. I haven't seen you in years." Naomi flushed, embarrassed. "Yes, sir. It's been a while." "Well, I'm looking for work." Mr. Carter's face softened. "If you're asking, then the answer is yes. I remember how hard you worked before. We're short on hands, and I'd be proud to have you back. But I'll warn you, this isn't fancy. Just honest food and good people." Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. "That's all I want." From that day forward, Naomi traded polished silverware and crystal glasses for greasy aprons and plates of fried chicken. But to her surprise, she felt freer than she had in years. At Carter's, she wasn't invisible. Customers called her ma'am with respect. Her co-workers treated her like family. And when she laughed, no one mocked her. They laughed with her. Marcus visited every day when his schedule allowed, often helping in the kitchen. The regulars adored him, asking about his training, thanking him for his service. Naomi would watch him with quiet pride, her heart glowing each time someone said, "You've raised a fine young man." Yet even as Naomi built her new life, the shadow of the Donovans lingered. She often wondered how long she could keep their cruelty hidden from Marcus's memory, how long she could move forward without the ghosts of the mansion pulling her back. But fate had its own way of evening the scales. One rainy afternoon, as Naomi wiped down tables, Marcus burst into the restaurant holding a folded newspaper. His eyes were wide with disbelief. "Mama, you need to see this." He spread the paper across the counter, and there it was. Headlines that made Naomi's breath catch. "Donovan Empire under fire, fraud allegations surface." She read in silence, her hands trembling. According to the article, Mr. Donovan had been caught in a web of shady business dealings, funneling money through offshore accounts, underpaying employees, and bribing officials. The government had launched an investigation, and the couple's lavish lifestyle was unraveling faster than anyone could believe. Naomi stared at the page, torn between shock and a strange, quiet satisfaction. The couple who had mocked her, humiliated her, and made her feel like nothing were now being dragged into the spotlight for their own corruption. Marcus leaned close, his voice low but steady. "Mama, this is what I meant. People like them think they can step on everyone else forever. But the truth always comes out. Look at you. You left with nothing but your dignity, and now you stand taller than they ever could." Naomi pressed her hands to her face, tears sliding down her cheeks. But these weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of release. For years, she had carried their words like weights on her shoulders. Now she felt those weights lift. Later that evening, as Naomi walked home from work, she passed a newsstand where a television displayed footage of the Donovans outside a courthouse. Mrs. Donovan, once dripping in jewels, looked pale and shaken, her designer dress soaked in rain. Reporters swarmed them, shouting questions, while Mr. Donovan shoved angrily past the cameras. Naomi stood in the drizzle, watching silently. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. Instead, she whispered a prayer, not for revenge, but for mercy. She had lived enough pain to know that bitterness only chained the soul. When she returned home, Marcus noticed her quiet expression. "You don't feel happy about it, do you?" Naomi shook her head. "Baby, life has a way of humbling people. I don't need to rejoice in their downfall. I just need to keep walking forward. That's how we win." Her words stayed with Marcus long into the night. He realized that his mother's strength wasn't in her silence, or even in her endurance, it was in her heart. Despite everything, she chose compassion over cruelty, grace over vengeance, and soon that grace would be tested again. Because while the Donovans' empire crumbled, their pride had not, and Naomi's path was about to cross theirs once more, in a way neither she nor Marcus could have expected. Weeks passed, and life at Carter's Kitchen became Naomi's sanctuary. The restaurant's warm chatter, the clinking of plates, and the smell of fried chicken felt like music to her soul. She had gone from serving billionaires who mocked her to serving ordinary people who thanked her with genuine smiles. Each "thank you, ma'am" stitched the wounds the Donovans had left behind. Marcus, too, flourished. His visits drew crowds, and the regulars often told Naomi, "Your boy is a hero." For the first time in years, she began to believe it wasn't just Marcus who was strong, it was her, too. But fate had a way of circling back. One late evening, just as the dinner rush had ended and Naomi was wiping down the counter, the bell above the restaurant door jingled. She glanced up, and her breath caught in her throat. It was the Donovans, gone with the glittering jewels and designer suits. Mr. Donovan's hair was unkempt, his suit wrinkled and stained from rain. Mrs. Donovan wore a plain coat, her face pale and drawn, though she still carried herself with a stiffness that screamed of pride. For a moment, the entire restaurant went silent. Conversations halted, forks hovered mid-air, and eyes darted between Naomi and the infamous couple now walking toward her. Naomi's hands tightened around the rag she held. Memories of humiliation rushed back, every cruel word, every mocking laugh. But she stood her ground. "Naomi," Mrs. Donovan said, her voice quieter than Naomi had ever heard it. We need to speak with you." Marcus, who had just come in through the back, froze when he saw them. His jaw clenched, his fists curled. He stepped beside his mother, his presence a wall of protection. "You've said enough to her already," he snapped. "Leave." But Mr. Donovan lifted his hands, his arrogance tempered now with desperation. "Please, just listen." Naomi's heart pounded, but she nodded slowly. "Say what you came to say." The couple exchanged a look before Mrs. Donovan spoke, her voice shaking despite her attempt at control. "We've lost everything. The investigations, the lawsuits. The banks have frozen our accounts. No one will take our calls. Our so-called friends have abandoned us." She swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. "We have nowhere else to turn." Naomi blinked, stunned. She searched their faces for mockery, for the cruel smirks she had known so well, but there were none. For the first time, she saw not billionaires towering over her, but two broken people stripped of the power that once made them untouchable. Mr. Donovan's voice cracked. We thought we were untouchable. We mocked you. We treated you like less than human. And now, look at us." He gestured at his wrinkled suit, his trembling hands. "We were wrong, Naomi. We were so wrong." The restaurant remained hushed. Every customer leaned closer, witnessing the moment unfold. Marcus's jaw softened, though his eyes still burned with anger. "You think you can just walk in here and apologize after everything you did to her?" he demanded. Naomi laid a gentle hand on her son's arm. Her heart wavered between the desire to let them feel the pain they had once inflicted and the quiet voice that reminded her who she was. She had always told Marcus that forgiveness was not weakness but strength. And now life was giving her the chance to live those words. She inhaled deeply. "Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, you took my dignity and tried to crush it. You laughed at my pain, but I won't let bitterness own me. I forgive you, but I can't forget. And forgiveness doesn't mean I'll let you treat me the same way again." Tears streamed down Mrs. Donovan's cheeks, streaking the makeup she had tried to wear as armor. Mr. Donovan lowered his head. "Ashamed," Naomi continued, her voice steady. "You asked where to turn. Look around." She gestured to the restaurant full of ordinary people watching quietly, some nodding in support. "These are the people you never saw, the ones you looked down on while you sat in your mansion. They are the heart of this city, the ones who know what struggle means. If you want to start over, you'll have to learn to live like them with humility." For a long moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Mrs. Donovan whispered, Would you help us?" Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Marcus's eyes widened, and Naomi's chest tightened. She had spent years serving them, cleaning their silver, bowing to their demands. And now the same couple stood before her, asking for her help. Marcus's voice cut sharp. "After everything you did, you expect her to save you?" Naomi looked at her son, then at the Donovans. She saw not enemies, but human beings brought low by their own pride. Slowly she nodded. "I will help, but not because you deserve it. I'll do it because kindness is stronger than cruelty. But understand this, the days of mocking me are over." The Donovans nodded, tears in their eyes. Their pride finally broken. As Naomi walked them to a table and offered them a meal, the restaurant erupted in applause. Customers clapped, some even wiping tears, while Marcus stood beside his mother in awe. In that moment, he realized she wasn't just strong, she was extraordinary. And though the Donovans had lost everything, Naomi had gained more than they ever possessed: respect, dignity, and the love of a community that saw her worth. The following weeks felt surreal. Naomi had taken the Donovans under her wing, not out of obligation, but out of quiet strength. She taught them the rhythms of an honest life, how to cook a simple meal, how to greet people with kindness, and most importantly, how to see the world beyond wealth and arrogance. The restaurant became their classroom, and slowly the Donovans began to understand that money could buy comfort, but never respect, love, or dignity. Marcus watched silently, pride swelling in his chest. He had always known his mother was extraordinary, but watching her guide the Donovans with patience and grace filled him with awe. "Mama," he whispered one evening as they closed the restaurant, "you've changed them without even raising your voice. How do you do it?" Naomi smiled softly, her hands folded over her apron. "Because anger only breeds more anger. Compassion, even for those who hurt you, is the only way to truly rise. And I've lived long enough to know that no one can steal my heart unless I let them." The Donovans were slow learners, stumbling over new ways of living, but each small step marked a profound change. They volunteered at the local food bank, helped clean the streets, and apologized to people they had wronged. For Naomi, it wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation. and she took quiet joy in watching their humility grow. One day, as Naomi served a table of smiling customers, she overheard a little girl ask her mother, "Why is that lady so happy?" Her heart swelled. Naomi realized that her happiness no longer depended on wealth or status. It came from being valued, being loved, and being able to extend grace to others, even to those who once tried to diminish her. Marcus approached, leaning against the counter. "Mama, do you ever think about the life we had before?" Naomi paused, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It was hard, yes, but every struggle led us here. Every insult, every long night, every tear. It made us stronger. And now look at us. We're not just surviving. We're thriving." That evening, after the last customer left, Naomi and Marcus sat on the small stoop outside the restaurant, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The city lights flickered on, and for the first time Naomi felt truly at peace. Her son was safe, her life was hers to shape, and even the Donovans had found a chance to learn humility. Then the phone rang. Naomi answered, surprised to hear Mr. Donovan's voice trembling on the other end. "Naomi, we want to thank you, truly. You didn't have to help us, and yet you did. I don't know how to repay you." Naomi closed her eyes, inhaling slowly. "You don't repay me. Just live your life differently. Treat people with respect. That's enough." A pause followed. Then Mr. Donovan said quietly, "You've taught us more than any money ever could. Thank you, Naomi." As she hung up, Naomi looked at Marcus. "See, baby? Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fight back. It's stand firm in your heart and let kindness lead." Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. "Mama, you're the bravest person I know. You taught me that real strength isn't about muscles or medals. It's about heart." Naomi pulled him into an embrace. "And you, my son, are my greatest reward. You came home, and together we've changed lives. We've proved that even in a world full of cruelty, love and grace can prevail." Weeks later, as spring arrived and flowers bloomed in the city streets, Naomi walked through the neighborhood with Marcus at her side. People waved, called out greetings, and children ran to hug her. The restaurant flourished. The Donovans had begun to rebuild their lives in humility, and Naomi had discovered a truth she had always known deep in her soul. Dignity and kindness could never be taken away, only strengthened by the trials of life. That night, Naomi stood at the doorway of the restaurant, watching the stars glitter above. She whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, not for wealth or luxury, but for the life she had earned, the son she had raised, and the power of forgiveness that had turned enemies into lessons and pain into triumph. Then she turned toward Marcus and smiled. "Do you know what the greatest thing about today is?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "It's that we've proven something important, that no matter what anyone says or does, we get to decide our worth. And we did it together." He took her hand, holding it tightly. "Yes, Mama, together." And in that moment, Naomi knew. Every hardship, every tear, every insult had led her here, not just to survival, but to a life full of love, respect, and the quiet joy that comes from knowing that true strength lies in the heart. The billionaire couple may have mocked her, the world may have doubted her, but Naomi and Marcus had emerged victorious in the most meaningful way, with dignity, compassion, and unbreakable love.